Let me tell you about a case. It's not my case, never was. But in my line of work, a case like this, it gets under your skin. It follows you home. You see the face in the grocery store, on the television, in your own grandkids' smiles. It becomes a part of you. The disappearance of Madeleine McCann is one of those cases. It's a black hole. It sucks in all the light, all the facts, all the theories, and it gives nothing back but more questions. I've dealt with monsters my whole career. This one hid in plain sight, disguised as a perfect storm of human error and tragic coincidence. Praia da Luz, Portugal, spring of 2007. Picture it. A picturesque fishing village turned tourist haven on the Algarve coast. Whitewashed buildings, red-tiled roofs, the kind of place that sells postcards of itself. The Ocean Club Resort, families, laughter, the clinking of wine glasses and the distant shush of the Atlantic waves. It's the kind of place that makes you let your guard down, and that's when the predator strikes. Always. They rely on that sense of safety. It's their best camouflage. The McCann family, Jerry and Kate, successful, educated, well off, doctors. They're on holiday with 3 young children and a group of their friends, other professional couples, all with kids. They're the picture of modern capable parenthood. Their system was logical. It made sense on paper. Eat dinner with your friends at a restaurant on the resort grounds. The apartments are right there. A stone's throw, 55 yards. You check on the sleeping children every 30 minutes. A rotating schedule. What could go wrong? I'll tell you what goes wrong. Life goes wrong. Evil goes wrong. It doesn't care about your logical plans. The timeline is everything in a case like this. It's the skeleton you hang the flesh of the investigation on. On the evening of May 3rd, the checks began. Jerry checks at 9:05 p.m. All is well. 3 children sleeping. Dr. Matthew Oldfield, one of their friends, does a check at 9:30 p.m. He notices the door to the apartment is heavier than usual, harder to open. He hears a shutter rattling. He sees the twins sleeping. He does not, he will later admit, lay eyes on Madeleine. He assumes she is there, obscured by a darkened room and a partially open door. This assumption, this simple human assumption, it's a crack in the dam. And the flood was coming. At 10 p.m., it's Kate's turn. She walks the short path back to apartment 5A. A ground floor unit, a patio door, a window behind a slatted gate in the children's room. She approaches the front door. It's unlocked, but that's not unusual. She enters. Something is off immediately. A draft. The door to the children's bedroom, which they always kept closed to keep the twins from waking, is wide open. She walks in. The window is open. The shutters are jacked up, forced from the outside. The cold night air is pouring in. The twins are sleeping peacefully. Madeleine's bed is empty. The pink blanket is there. The soft toy, cuddle cat, is there. But the little girl is gone. The first thought, the only thought a parent allows themselves. She wandered off. A quick search of the apartment, the garden, nothing. The panic now is a living thing. It infects the friends, the resort staff. The search widens. The police are called. But here is where the first and perhaps most critical mistake was made. The Portuguese Polícia Judiciária. They treated this as a lost child incident, not a crime. The crime scene, that bedroom, that apartment, was a treasure trove of potential evidence. It was the one witness that couldn't lie. And we lost it. We lost it to a parade of well-meaning tourists, hotel staff and friends, all trampling through, touching doors, touching windows, shedding their own hairs and fibers, obliterating the fragile, invisible story that was written in that room. It's a homicide detective's worst nightmare. The truth was right there, and we smothered it with our own bare hands. The focus, as it so often does, turned to the parents. It's the path of least resistance. You look at the family. Their behavior was put under a microscope, analyzed by armchair detectives and real ones alike. They didn't cry the right way. They didn't hug the right way. They gave press conferences. They seemed too composed, or too distraught, or too something. Let me tell you something. Grief is a fingerprint. It's never the same twice. I've seen mothers sit silent and catatonic over the body of a child they adored. I've seen fathers weep over a son they put in the ground themselves. You cannot judge guilt or innocence by a tear-stained face. The Portuguese investigation became obsessed with a theory: an accident in the apartment, a fall, a sedative given to help the children sleep that went wrong, a cover-up by two terrified, respected professionals to hide a tragic mistake. They brought in their big guns, two British sniffer dogs, one trained for human blood, one for the scent of a corpse. And the dogs, they alerted. They alerted behind the sofa in the living room. They alerted to the scent of blood on a wall. And weeks later, after the McCanns had rented a car, they alerted to the trunk of that vehicle. This, for the Portuguese, was the case. Closed. They made Kate and Jerry arguidos, formal suspects. It's a neat theory. Tidy. It wraps everything up in a bow of tragedy and parental failure. But I've been doing this a long time. Neat theories are usually wrong. Life is messy. Crime is messy. The idea that two intelligent people, surrounded by their closest friends in a foreign country, would choose to hide the body of their child and then launch the most prolific missing person campaign in modern history. It doesn't track. Conspiracies are leaky boats. Someone always talks. Under the pressure of a multinational manhunt, one of those 7 friends at that dinner table would have cracked. They never did. The dogs? Dogs are a tool. They are not a jury. A dog's alert tells you where to look, not what happened. That evidence, without physical corroboration, without a body, without a murder weapon, is a story, not a fact. While the official investigation chased its tail, the world woke up. Madeleine's face was everywhere. That photo, the one with the coloboma, the flaw in her iris that made her unique, made her unforgettable. My squad room was flooded with tips. She was seen in a marketplace in Morocco, on a beach in Spain, on a ferry to Greece. Every sighting was a flicker of hope that burned out just as fast, leaving behind the ashes of disappointment. It's a special kind of hell for a family, that cycle of hope and despair. Then came the private investigators. The McCanns, with money pouring in from a public fund, hired teams. Former cops from Scotland Yard. They chased every shadow. They looked at every known sex offender in the Algarve. They investigated a bizarre story about a man seen carrying a child in pajamas near the church. They looked into a woman who'd asked for the church keys to pray for a dying child. They followed a lead about a mysterious call made from a phone box near the apartment. Leads turned cold. Doors slammed shut. It was like trying to nail jelly to a wall. The years rolled on. The case file grew thick and dusty. But cold cases have a heartbeat. You can't hear it, but it's there. A slow, persistent thump in the dark. And then a new dawn. Forensic technology, genetic genealogy. We started using it in Colorado to crack cases that had been ice cold for decades. It was a miracle. And in Germany, the Federal Criminal Police Office, the BKA, they were paying attention. In June of 2020, they made an announcement that shook the foundations of this case wide open. They had a new prime suspect, a German national, a man named Christian Bruckner. Now, this name wasn't completely new. He'd been a ghost in the machine for a while. But the Germans, they were confident. They called him a murderer. On the record. This man, he is the portrait of a predator, a career criminal, a convicted child abuser, a rapist. He was a one-man crime wave living like a parasite in the Algarve. Burglaries, drug dealing, violence. He was a drifter. He knew Praia da Luz like the back of his hand. His method? He would break into ground-floor tourist apartments, specifically while the occupants were at dinner, to steal cash and passports. He had a history of horrific filmed sexual assaults against elderly tourists. This was no petty thief. This was a dangerous, deviant, opportunistic animal. The German evidence is circumstantial, but it's compelling. It's the kind of stuff that keeps a homicide detective up at night. It starts with a phone. Bruckner's Portuguese mobile phone received a call that night. That phone pinged a cell tower in Praia da Luz around 7 p.m. An hour later, it pinged a tower that covered the exact area of the McCann's apartment. Then, at 10:40 p.m., the time the abduction was believed to have occurred, the phone was switched off, completely dead, for 2 hours. It was switched back on just after midnight and began moving east, out of the area. That's not coincidence. That's a pattern. That's a man who knows his business. Then, the vehicle. A dilapidated old Jaguar XJR6 registered to Bruckner. Forensic teams, years later, went over it with tools we didn't have in 2007. They found traces. Minute traces of biological material inside that car. Not enough for a full DNA profile, but enough to suggest something terrible had been transported inside it. And then, the witness, a criminal associate of Bruckner's. He claims they were in a bar years later, and Bruckner, drunk and bragging, showed him a video on his phone of himself committing a rape. And he said, "I've done it before. I snatched her from her bed." And then, the most chilling words of all, she didn't cry. She's not crying anymore. This is the man sitting in a German prison cell right now. He's there for the brutal 2005 rape of a 72-year-old American woman in Praia da Luz. He will never see the outside of a prison cell again. The Germans are building a case against him for the murder of Madeleine McCann. But it's a tough road. The phone data places him in the area, not in the apartment. The witness is a junkie and a criminal, a man whose credibility would be shredded in a courtroom. The forensics in the car are tantalizing, but not conclusive. So where does that leave us? After all these years, all this pain, all this ink and airtime, it leaves us with a suspect, but no body, with a theory, but no closure, with a story that has a monster in it, but no ending. The tragedy of Madeleine McCann is a deep, dark well. It's the tragedy of a life stolen before it even began. It's the tragedy of a family forever broken, forever trapped on that warm Portuguese night. It's the tragedy of a police investigation that failed in its first, most crucial hours. And it's a stark, cold reminder that the world is not always a postcard. Sometimes the prettiest places hide the ugliest truths. The case is cold, but it's not closed. Not for me. Not for a lot of us. Somewhere out there, the truth is waiting. And my money says it's wearing the face of a monster named Christian Bruckner. But until we can prove it, really prove it, all we have are the questions. And the echo of a little girl who just vanished into the night.